Creative Director here at Hallard Press, and welcome and thank you for being with us. We're going to do a little looking at publishing, design and publishing today, and some of the steps that we go through in order to make all this happen for our writers. So the first thing we want to talk about today is what do we call ourselves? In many cases, we had in the past called ourselves self-published authors or self-publishing companies. And to me, that sounds like the kind of people who make their own kitchen cabinets because that's what they do or because they don't know how to do it otherwise. What I would suggest is that we call ourselves indie authors and indie publishers because we're independent. We're not beholden to any large publishing company that tells us how we should change our books. We're independent publishers. We can take any book that's any genre and publish it. And so we're independent. So let's call ourselves indie authors and indie publishers. Book publishing is part art, part technology, and part checklists. And in some cases, the checklists are the biggest part of it. So we're going to go through some of the things that we check, some of the art and some of the technology. Our job is to take the author's book from a Word document or a Pages document and publish it, package it into a 6x9 or other size book. And most of the trade books today that we do are 6x9. And our job is to make them readable, saleable, and interesting. We go through 5 major steps. And on the right-hand side, you can see some of the books that we've published over the last year or so. We go through a design step, through an account setup, through approvals, through the upload process, and finally we get to push the big button that says publish. First step we're going to look at is design. Page design. People say, well, what's to design on a page? It's just a lot of type. Well, that's true. But how the page is designed really makes the difference between whether the author has an enjoyable experience and enjoys the book or whether they don't. If someone has a book that is great and the page is not set up properly, they look at it, it's a terrible book. So we need to set the page up to reflect a whole bunch of things. There are parts of the book that are mandatory. The front matter, we call it. There's a title page, there's a table of contents, maybe there's a dedication, there's the copyright page, there's all kinds of things that must be in the book in order for it to meet certain standards. There are standard elements, the header, footer, page number, even the margins on a page. The left margins are different than the right margins because you have to have a gutter in the page. Typography is extremely important. We want to have typefaces that are very readable, typefaces that are properly kerned or tracked so the space between the letters is correct. And we want the leading, the space between the lines to be correct to give the best reading experience. Whether they're indented paragraphs or justified lines, we have to decide all that. And we want a serif font for the body so that it's easy to read. There's a whole technology behind that, and I'd be happy to explain it, but not right now. Chapters start on right-hand pages. We want to be able to have the photos so that they can be enhanced or cropped and in grayscale for black and white books. We want a Library of Congress number, maybe. We want to have an ISBN number for sure because that's how the books are identified. There are 4,000 books a day come on the market. Each one has a separate ISBN number. You cannot copyright a book title name. So if you go to Amazon and you type in a popular name of a book, you'll probably find 3 or 4 of them. The ISBN number keeps them sorted out. We need proofs and revisions and back matter like the bio and the acknowledgement and so on. So we want to give the reader an enjoyable experience, and this checklist is a small version of the one that we use. The cover. The only purpose of the cover is to make a prospect pick the book up and want to buy it. So we also have a checklist, naturally. On the outside front cover, we have all kinds of elements that we must have there, and we have to consider the fonts and the colors. The spine The colophon is the imprint of the publisher, and sometimes indie publishers have a colophon, and sometimes the indie authors also have one that they make up so that they have their own publishing company, so to speak. And the outside back, the blurb on the outside back, the only purpose is to get somebody to open the book up and read it. Maybe it has the author photo and a review and the ISBN and the price. Pricing is all important. We use algorithms or formulas to determine pricing based on how much the author wants to make. People will say to us sometimes, what do you use for software? Well, we start off with Word or Pages. That's what the manuscript comes to us in. We convert that virtually immediately to some of the programs in the Adobe Creative Suite, InDesign, Photoshop, Acrobat, Illustrator, and that's what we use to create the books and the ebooks even, from basically InDesign. We may use Kindle Previewer, we use Adobe Stock Photos often, and various other bits and pieces of software that help keep the book flowing along and make it look good. Account setup. This is something that many indie authors get quite concerned about. Kindle Direct Publishing, or KDP, is Amazon. It's all the same thing. It's kind of like saying that a Buick is a General Motors car. Lightning Source is the Ingram Spark equivalent of KDP, or Kindle Direct Publishing. Kindle and Lightning Source are the in-house book printers for Amazon and Ingram Spark. And if you're not familiar with Ingram Spark, it's a distribution, printing and distribution company similar to Amazon, but different. Amazon sells more books to consumers. In fact, they sell about 65% of the books that are published in the US. Ingram Spark essentially sell their books to book shops and Barnes and Noble and those kinds of places. There are other companies that are involved. Boker is the official ISBN supplier and registrar. You need your own ISBN for Ingram Spark. Amazon will supply you with a free ISBN if you just put your book on Amazon, but they own the book, they own the ISBN, and you may have problems if you want to put it somewhere else. We can explain all that to you. It takes a few minutes. Setting your account up really is the business and costs of publishing that come to your computer screen. There's a lot of checklists here. When setting your account up, either on Ingram Spark or on Amazon, you're going to have a number of boxes to fill in. They all want the title, they all want the book description, they all want the author bio, they all want the front cover image, and they all want the price. If you're setting it up with KDP, they also want to issue you a 1099 for your royalties, so they're going to want you to fill in the information to get a W-2. That includes your social security number and or your EIN. KDP also wants your bank account so they can send you your royalties. Some people get concerned. I've never heard of a case where anybody has hacked into their system and stolen those, so I think they're quite safe. You may need keywords and categories and metadata that concern the book, and we can help you with that. Author info, a book description. We want to know who your book is going to, and you may have to fill that in. The distribution, US, overseas, Australia. What's the pricing? Is the ebook price different than the print book? Well, yes, probably, but how much are you going to charge? We need to know how much the book is going to cost, and we can calculate that during the setup. One of the good things about account setup is that you can stop and start. If the question is something that you have to go look it up and it's going to take 10 minutes, you can stop, go back, pick it up where you left off. So the main thing is when you're setting up your account, don't panic. Everybody goes through this. If you need help, we help our authors. We usually set the account up for them. Approvals. All along the way, the indie author has the approvals. If it's coming back and approving it from the editor. You read it, you make sure that nothing's been changed. You look at the editor's suggestions, you make changes or don't make changes. When you get to the book itself, the purpose of the approval process is to ensure that everything is accurate and that we have your approval. The book pages and cover proofs, the first completion, the first go at it. We usually provide printed proofs, much like the old galley proofs you may have heard of in the past. You make changes, mark them, and we'll make them in the final proofs and give you another proof. The second page and cover proofs, prior to uploading the book, we ask that you make minor changes if you need to. We would like all of the changes to be made at the Word stage. That's usually impossible. So we want them made at stage 1, and stage 2 should be very, very minor, just odd things that really need to be fixed. Then we can order you a book proof from KDP or Ingram Spark. It's a printed book. It's exactly the book that was uploaded. It's exactly the book that you approved, but it gives you one last chance to make final revisions before committing it to actual publishing. The upload. This is where many first-time indie authors, this is where the rubber meets the road and people get very concerned about making a mistake or doing it incorrectly. We help our authors by doing this for them. Purpose is to get the book into the sales and distribution system and ready to publish. There's a checklist. Naturally, there's a checklist. It's a little different for KDP and Lightning Source. There's a checklist. We would upload a press quality PDF of the pages. We would review it for you. We would publish it or get a book approval. And we would see everything that's on and in the book before it's approved. For KDP and Ingram, in terms of an ebook, it's much the same, but we upload a different type of file. There are fixed page ebooks where the page exactly mirrors the page that's in the book. They're also flowable so that they flow differently on different devices and in different typefaces. And which one we choose depends on the type of book you have, how it's laid out, and we help our authors determine which one is best for them. The final step after upload is to publish. And there's a interesting phenomena that happens. People get sometimes to the end of the entire process. There's one more step, and it's called publish. They need to push that button. And sometimes that button looks like, well, I've published my book, I don't have to do anything. And in fact, they need to push this button with their cursor to get the book published. Otherwise, nothing much happens. You may have a lot of questions. We've gone through this fairly quickly, and it's a complicated process. It takes several weeks to get through, and we're happy to answer questions. You can call, we'll talk. You can email the questions. If you go to our website, hallardpress.com, there are FAQs that answer a lot of questions. But if you're like me, I hate trying to look the questions up and trying to figure out what the real question is. I'd rather just ask somebody who knows the answer. So call me. Anyway, thank you for listening and watching. And if you have questions, call me. We'll be happy to talk.